All right, let's get rocking and rolling. Good morning to people on the West Coast from here in Seattle, Washington, and good afternoon to folks out east or in the Midwest. It's a great, we are doing today's webinar on Tuesday. Normally these are on Wednesdays. We're back after a bit of a summer break. Thanks for the folks who are able to join us today. If you can't make it stay for the whole thing, remember that our webinars are always available online as well at lexblog.com/support. You can find the full history there and see everything that there is there for you. So without further ado, let's dive in and see what we have on tap today. We have, I think, one of the subjects that people struggle with the most, and a lot of times they struggle with it because honestly they overthink it. They rely on the same old wells for post ideas, and honestly, there's a lot of different ways to be able to do it. And this should come easier. Basically, everything that I'm going to describe in this is aimed at making the process easier, not harder. I'm not trying to get into, you know, secret tips and tricks or just crazy strategies or what have you. This is just hopefully aimed at dumbing down the idea of post ideas and coming up with a way for you to stand out from the crowd. So on this webinar, we're going to hit a few different things. First off, I want to give you a bit of a refresher on the three tenets that I lay out for law blogging. These are, it's not perfect, but based on the things that I've seen, these are the things that good law bloggers do. We're also going to talk about why it's important to be proactive and not just reactive with your post ideas. We'll get into exactly how to be proactive, what that means, and then also how to go about executing it and making it happen. We'll take a look at some examples, and then also we'll just, recap and answer any questions. I will say, if you have questions in the middle and you want to reach out, let me know. I can see the chat on here, so don't hesitate to reach out, and we can hit those types of things as well. But yeah, let's dive in. So you may be asking, if you haven't met me before, who is this guy? What does he do? Does he know anything about this stuff? I'm Colin O'Keefe. I'm director of product here at LexBlog, so I'm in charge of working with the real smart people. I am not one of them when it comes to coding and stuff like that, but I am an experienced blogger and have been at this for almost as long as the medium exists, writing about social and digital, writing about baseball, about University of Montana athletics. And also at the same time, I've been at LexBlog number of different roles, a lot of them in the publishing and the editorial space. So that involves taking a look at all the posts that flow across our network on a day-to-day basis. We see close to 200 posts flow across the LexBlog platform on a day-to-day basis. And basically every single business day, I'm taking a look and scanning across all those. So I've gotten a good sense for what stands out and what does not stand out. I've even got a refresher in preparing for this webinar as well. I will say, don't hesitate to reach out personally to me. If we've interacted, you have my cell phone, the signature, but also don't hesitate to just drop me a line, colin@lexblog.com, 1L. Whether that's, hey, this presentation was great, I would love to have you do it for this practice group. Or, hey, can we do a blog post ideation session where we kind of all work together and come up with something for this certain group? Or, hey, it would be a good idea for the platform. You know what, I would really make my job a lot easier. This. Don't hesitate to reach out with that stuff. That's what I'm here for. The whole LexBlog team is here for. We're always happy to help. But if you want to reach out to me personally, you can do that, colin@lexblog.com. There are three things I want. This is kind of a bit of a refresher. If you've been on previous webinars, you've seen that we've hit two of the three things previously. And again, as a reminder, you can go to lexblog.com/support, get into our support center, and you'll be able to get into past webinars. There are three things, that I tell all of the law bloggers that I work with that are kind of graduated from something that's the most simple to a little bit more challenging to the most, most complex to challenging. Those are, first and foremost, write to the medium. Remember that you are writing a blog. It's not a book. It's not a news article. It's not a white paper. It's not a memo. It's a blog, and it will be read online. And you need to remember that's the way that people read stuff. That's the first one. Be proactive. We're going to cover this today. So I'm not going to divulge all of that right now, but And then the third one is thinking strategically. Blogging is all about networking through the internet, and you want to be deliberate in how you go about networking. So we've had a webinar on the first one, and we've had a webinar on the last one, and now we're kind of hitting the middle. A little bit out of order, doesn't necessarily have to be in order, but if you're curious on the details of, hey, what does it mean to write to the medium? We've got a webinar on that. And then if you're like, hey, what does it mean to think strategically with my blog? We've got a webinar on that as well. So with that, let's dive into being proactive. This sounds like kind of a vague subject, but I promise we'll make it very actionable and practical. But you're probably here thinking, what does it mean to be proactive? Why do I need to be proactive? What does that exactly mean? So let's dive into this section here. First and foremost, I don't know how many other people are reading everybody else's law blog posts. I can see for some folks, they may not want to because they're thinking, hey, I have this covered. Why do I need to read my competitor's stuff? I would encourage everybody to do that. But as somebody who has read an absolute ton of this stuff, the vast majority of law blog posts, particularly from the large law firms that we work with, tend to really bleed together. And while they cover a wide range of topics under this umbrella, the vast majority of posts cover one of three things: litigation, legislation, regulation. So, hey, there is a piece of legislation that came down or might come down or is going to come down. Here's what it means. Here's what it could impact. Litigation, this person sued that person. Here's what it means. Here's the outcome. Here's, how this impacts this area of law. Or it could be regulation. Hey, lawmakers are getting together and they're looking at going after this particular thing. They're often very dry. You'll see footnotes and stuff like that. They appeal to a very narrow audience. And what I mean by that is not necessarily just the people in the industry or that area of law. It also means like who is capable of and interested in this post. For a lot of law blog posts, it's going to be almost exclusively fellow lawyers, in-house counsel. It's going to be sometimes, execs in various industries, but it's very much written for fellow lawyers, whether in-house or outside counsel, who find themselves in a very specific situation or context. Hey, here's what the NLRB said and did, and here's why that applies to this group of folks. Or, hey, here's a new EPA regulation. It's about blah, 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 blah. And here's what that means. Usually they're not creative. That isn't to say that you should not cover these things. This bluntly is still the backbone of law blogging. It's keeping your readers informed about what you're covering, but it can't be all that you do. If it is all that you do, you will look like most other law bloggers, because this honestly is what most law bloggers do. If I get off this webinar and I jump into the back end of lexblog.com to sort today's front page and feature a few stories, the vast majority will look like this and will blend together with everyone else. So, consider that. It isn't also just, hey, I know not everybody is reading the same amount of law blog posts that I am, but consider all the places where you will appear amongst a broad crowd, whether it's somebody's email inbox, their social news feeds, distribution sources like Jitty Supra and Lexology. Consider that a lot of the stuff going out is going to look the same. So how do I have my stuff look a little bit differently? Like I said, what I'm trying to do here is explain that this is easier than you think. And for a lot of this stuff, it should come naturally. So consider the job of a lawyer, particularly the lawyers we work with who forge close relationships with businesses and other entities. They're working on an ongoing basis. It isn't specifically related to one individual matter. So it's your job to, identify risks and opportunities on the horizon. If you're a lawyer and you are only operating as a lawyer in a purely reactive fashion, you're probably going to do less work and less good work than your competitors who are being a bit more proactive and identifying potential deals, trends, and stuff like that. It's your job to decipher those patterns and trends. oh, this type of law is making its way across the country, or oh, we're seeing a lot of this type of movement in this industry. It's your job to work through large bodies of evidence, detailed documents, and relay the important information. It's taking, it's finding the signal in the noise. If you're just, noise yourself, it's not as helpful as if you're operating the way a great lawyer would or a great partner would, which is, hey, keep an eye on this, or hey, this caught my attention and it's something that you should know about. Be mindful of that. And again, like I said, just remember, your job as a lawyer is not just to be reactive. It's not just to, oh man, we got this incident in the workplace. It's just absolutely out of control. It's going so bad. We're worried that this person's going to sue us. It's going to go off the rails. If that was the only time you stepped in to be a lawyer, you probably wouldn't be that good of a lawyer. People are looking for a lot more. Like I mentioned, being proactive is a key separator. This is something I've mentioned on every single webinar, but kind of gets overlooked a little bit, as crazy as it seems. But hey, bluntly, like obviously you want people to read what you write. If you're spending the time to write a post, I know it takes time. I've written posts. I always think, hey, this is going to take 40 minutes. I'm going to be able to knock it out. 2 hours later, I've put a lot of work into something. I'm proud of it. And obviously I want it to be something that people read. But if you want people to read what you write, you have to write stuff that people want to read. I know it seems so simple, but like when I look at what you see from the vast majority of law blog content, it's stuff that people may not want to read. They almost feel like they have to read. It's not necessarily catching their attention. And it's just all blending together. And you still want to have those things. You want to cover the subjects that you have to cover, but you also want to remember, hey, I'm looking to not just succeed with this one piece of content. I'm not just looking to say, hey, here's what you need to know about this NLRB ruling, and we've got that covered, and you're informed, and that's all good. No, you're looking to develop a long-term relationship with a reader. Somebody goes, oh, this person, oh, looks like they're going to be covering some interesting stuff. I want to stay subscribed to this. I want to keep an eye on this. Also, a big part of blogging is showing people how you think. This is a strange anecdote, but bear with me. Cover letters in the world of hiring are getting more and more derided, I guess. You're seeing people like, oh, why do I have to write this cover letter? Why do you have to do this? For me personally, I love a cover letter. I mean, in a lot of the roles that I've hired for, it involves writing, so I do want to see that. But there is no better way to see how somebody thinks than how they work through writing something out. So in the case of a cover letter, it's, hey, here's how my skills apply to this job description. Honestly, a post or a blog over time is like a long-term cover letter. It's, hey, here's how I scan the horizon. Here's how I decipher and read through the data that is coming towards me. And then here's how I process that and form opinions, strategies, thoughts from that material. So you want to show people how you think, how you work through things. It can be a big separator. And honestly, for a lot of folks, they're not really showing people how they think in their law blog posts, because it's, hey, here's what happens, here's what it means, here's what you need to know, we're onward. Again, still want to hit those, but you really want to show people how you think and what's inside your head and how you keep an eye on things. And then also, of course, big thing, just, hey, stand out. You will stand out. If you write one of these posts, if 25% of your blog posts are more proactive in nature and not reactive, you will start to stand out very quickly. It is one of the things that people who have built a good book of business through their publishing, the people that have experienced life-changing work as a result of their publishing, they all do this. They are all doing more than just being reactive to what's going on out there. And then lastly, I mentioned this with the relationship, but you got to get somebody's attention before you can connect with them. If you're looking to develop a long-term relationship over a blog, grow somebody from potential client to long-term partner in the legal space, you got to get their attention first. And it's not always easy to get the attention with just, here are the nuances of this individual EPA ruling or what have you. Still got to cover those, but you want to get people's attention. So let's get into kind of how you go about doing this? What does it look like? How do lawyers do this right now? Like I said, and I keep hinting at, is this should come naturally. This isn't some crazy new idea. It's honestly just taking a lot of what you do now and bringing it into the blogging space. So first off, capitalize on how you view the world as a lawyer, or encourage your lawyers to do so for the marketers who are on here. Everyone to some extent views the world through their occupation. So when they see a new piece of information or a story or a development or what have you, a lot of times they're going to just, I guess, decipher that through their own worldview, through their occupation. So say, for example, Kamala Harris rolls out, hey, here's my immigration policy, or she rolls out her new policy platform on the, say it's Kamala Harris for president.com. I don't know. I haven't looked at that, but that comes out and it's down. If you're an immigration lawyer, you're going to jump right to the immigration section and be like, all right, where's this headed? If you're employment, you're going to take a look at the labor and employment. Same for environmental. For me, being a product manager in legal publishing, I might go, oh, site's really responsive. Okay, that's an interesting design. Okay. But you're always reminded of just how you move through the world and what your occupation is. Bring those observations back to the blog. On our last webinar, yes, before summer break, we talked about the blog as a home base, and that's true here. A lot of blogging is just, hey, seeing the things that you see out in the world and bringing them back to your blog. This is my home base. This is where you can see how I think. This is where you can see what I do. And just these observations that you see out there. It could be in the real world. It could be in your media consumption. Could be any number of sources. But as something pops into your head or it goes, hey, yeah, I saw this and it made me think, or I saw that and it made me think of this. Bring those back to the blog, even those small, finite ideas. And they can be really small. A blog post need not be, 1,600 words, 2,200 words with this deep outline. It can be, hey, I saw this. It reminded me of that. Thought I'd share it with you. Yeah, having a blog is about building personal relationships with readers over a long period of time. So continue to do that. Probably one of the most important pieces of advice from this webinar is to draw on your existing consumption habits. We can and probably will at some point do a webinar on listening tools. We've done them in the past. And you always want to have some workflow that you have for consuming news. I have to imagine everybody, like, as an adult on this webinar, has some process that they have for keeping an eye on what's going on out in the world. Gosh, it could be TikTok, it could be Twitter, it could be the newspaper, it could be your inbox. But remember to supplement that, in a repeatable way to mix into your blogging, which is to say, hey, if you read the newspaper every morning and you're constantly taking a look at the Financial Times, that's the first thing that you read every morning. Consider, if something gives you pause, if it makes you think of your work, make note of that. There are a lot of different ways to do this, and I would say it doesn't have to be the most regimented system to be able to work it into blog posts. I've always really enjoyed writing on a blog that is my own, a solo publication, because then I don't really have to answer to anybody when I come up with post ideas. If you're writing on a group blog, it might be a good idea to have an occasional, not brainstorming opportunities, but even just like a joint like Slack channel or Microsoft Teams channel, however that works. That's just, hey, post ideas, because it can be really simple, really raw, really easy to work through. Like for me, you can have a scratch pad in Google Docs that's just, hey, here are the posts that I thought of when I was out and about. I was having a conversation with somebody or what have you. It's accessible on my phone. I can hit it from any time. I can drop links in there. I also love, there's a tool called Pocket. You can add a Chrome bookmark extension that basically just saves stuff to your Pocket account. You can even download articles so you can read them. It's been around. This stuff always makes me feel old. It's like, wow, back in the day, you would download articles in case your plane didn't have Wi-Fi. A lot of them do, but it's a great tool for bookmarking, collecting all the stuff that you're interested in. And you can even just utilize the bookmarking tools that are available in wherever you consume your news. Honestly, most of them are going to have some kind of tool. my bookmarks tab on Twitter/X is just like full of stuff that's like, oh, I should write about this later. Oh, I should write about that later. Oh, I should write about this. Find whatever works for you and then just come back to that later and there will be something there to draw on to see what's out there. So fold blogging into your existing consumption habits. And it is all about building a habit. That's the most challenging part of blogging. I can speak from personal experience is, sometimes it's, if you were to compare it to jogging, it's like, hey, if I can just get my shoes on and get out the door, that's pretty good. With blogging, it's like, hey, if I can get maybe the second or third paragraph, then I'm really cooking. Just keep typing, get words on the page. And when it's as casual as, hey, here's this thing I saw, here's what it made me think, here's that honestly can be that could be the entire post. And it could be intro, block quote, here's what I thought, 2 paragraphs, boom, we're out. And it's just an interesting place. It's almost akin to taking this and pinning an article on the wall and going, hey, this was interesting. Also, utilize your own personal experiences. Again, people want to know you. People don't necessarily hire lawyers from publishing because, oh, they went through the details of this NLRB ruling or this SEC enforcement action in just the right way and they were great with it. They, honestly, it might just be, hey, they like the cut of your jib. They like that you have these jogging anecdotes mixed into your blog because they're a jogger too, and it's something to talk about. Heck, one of my favorite law bloggers to work with and just interact with is a big White Sox fan. Bless his heart. Tough times for them, but I know that I can connect with him over that. And you can draw on those experiences. Hey, this is like that time when it was this, or hey, I remember back in the day working on a situation like this. The regulations were such that it was different. But draw on your knowledge of space over time. So you've kept an eye on an industry. You've been in this industry for a long period of time. Draw on those personal experiences draw on those personal experiences that you've had working in your industry and your practice area. It could be, hey, in the old days, I might have dealt with it like this. Now I deal with it like that. Or, wow, this is, changed in a big way. Or under certain presidencies, this happens. Under that type of presidencies, that happens. Anyone can summarize legal news. Honestly, you could even, I do not do this. I'm not recommending it. Please, for the love of God, do not do this. But you could probably, throw a ruling into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you pull out the primary points and then just write out what this might mean for the law industry? It'll give you a start. It could do that. But only you will be able to say, hey, this is like that time I did this, or this is like that, or knowing what I know about the specific geographic area and how judges operate here, I know it's going to operate like that. So draw on those personal experiences. So we've kind of hit on what it means a little bit to be proactive. Again, like the big thing is most law blog posts are going to be litigation, legislation, and regulation. If you're going to, infer anything from this presentation as far as what it means to be proactive, it's getting outside of the bounds of these 3 key things, or at least approaching them in a different way. You want to scan what's on the horizon and bring that to your audience, bring how you see the world to your blog and to your readers. And honestly, yeah, you gotta write stuff that people want to read. So let's dive into what it actually looks like. What is an example of this? Well, we'll get into examples after this section, but I want to kind of build up to that so we can all see what we're talking about with what are some go-to sources of inspiration that we can use to generate post ideas. And there are some tried and true, really simple ones. And honestly, bluntly, like it's going to seem really obvious, but honestly, even like going through our featured posts from the last week on lexblog.com, it's not like the simplest thing in the world to find what I would consider proactive posts because they are pretty rare. It's odd, but I guarantee you the best law bloggers always do this. So I'm going to get into some sources of information and you may be like, oh, duh, well, we're going to talk about this, but let me tell you, most people don't. And if you're like, hey, My lawyers could obviously hit this. I'm sure they are, right? I'm sure they're doing this. They're probably not. So let's get into some sources of inspiration. First and foremost, current events, the news, always huge. I know that's so broad, but it's real, it's salient, it's what you are seeing on a regular basis. It's gonna be in front of your eyes. You probably don't have to do any extra work to be hit with the news or current events or what you're seeing. It goes back to working off of your existing consumption habits. So they're always out there. They're real. You're salient. You're working off of a body of knowledge that most people are familiar with, and a story or an item that most people are familiar with. So you can look at something and go, hey, what does this big story mean for your area of practice? How is this going to impact your clients and your potential clients? And it's not just Supreme Court rulings. It's not just whatever. It's what's more on the horizon. Easy post for every single blog on our network. The Canon Law blog's always been good at this. We'll see. I'll have to keep an eye on Hush Blackwell, Hillary Bricken now on, I believe it's the Blunt Truth. Forgive me if it's not, but their cannabis blogs, we'll see. They always do a great job of being like, cannabis and the candidates. Here is what Donald Trump would mean for the cannabis industry. I would expect somebody to be like, here is what Kamala Harris could mean for the cannabis industry. Every single lawyer out there could have 2 posts, if not more, that say, here's what this presidential candidate winning means for this area of law. Here's what that presidential candidate means for that area of law. You could do 2 posts, you could do 1 post, you could honestly do 12 posts and have so much stuff to write about. And this is very, very real stuff. I mean, one of these 2 people is going to be the president come January of 2025. And people will want to know what that means going forward. And you can also, honestly, you write this now, you hit on the big things. You can always recirculate that post later once the election is decided in November, once you get into the first 100 days and that type of stuff. Easy and really good post. Man, it makes me feel so adult to talk about this now, but like, hey, the economy is looking solid, inflation is cooling a little bit, and the topic of the day now becomes, hey, when's the Fed going to lower interest rates again? Is that going to happen anytime soon? Obviously the cost to borrow money impacts so many different industries. You could write a divorce law blog post about the impact of a potentially lower interest rate on the probability of divorce or how it's going to impact divorces going forward. You could write obviously about privacy and cybersecurity, how that might mean certain, rapid build out or not rapid build out of certain things. Obviously you have construction and real estate, that level of investment. If it's cheaper to borrow money, that's going to impact those things in a major and significant way. So use those big stories. I would even just challenge you as an exercise to, even if you're not going to use these as post ideas, but after this webinar, maybe you have 30 minutes, just go to nyt.com or news.google.com or wapo.com. Take a look only at the front page, take a look only at headlines, and I bet you could see, oh, that makes me think of something that's going on in my practice area, or that makes me think of something that's going on in my practice area. So I challenge you to just look at that stuff. And again, a lot of this is probably happening naturally where you're thinking, whew, man, if Trump gets elected, that's going to mean this, that, or the other. Oof. Now that this is Harris, that's probably different from Biden in these ways, but it might not be. Bring that stuff back to your blog. That's what your readers are counting on, is not your ability to summarize stuff that's already happened, to react to stuff that's already happened. It's scanning the horizon and seeing how stuff could impact. I mean, even similarly, I was trying to think of a third bullet here, but fall is coming. Kids are going back to school. It's the world that we live in now, that COVID-19 is not a pandemic, but it's endemic. And we will probably have a COVID wave in the fall. What does that mean for labor and employment and return to office policies that continue to ramp up? What does that mean for, a number of different areas for personal injury? What does that mean in the education space? What would, a COVID impact wave, or how would a COVID wave impact real estate and construction? There's so many different places that you can see things coming on the horizon. And when you demonstrate to your audience your ability to do that, it really resonates, and you'll develop relationships with folks over time because they'll say, hey, this person's keeping an eye on that type of stuff. They're keeping an eye on things in the way that I want a lawyer to keep an eye on things. Next, again, these are these ones that seem like so obvious, and it's almost like the Canva approach to blogging, but it works, and most people don't do this. Calendar is your friend. Every single year, a lot of blogs will have this, but I would encourage every blog to have this. Is once the year winds down, here are the biggest stories of the year in construction law. Here are the biggest stories of the year in cannabis law. Okay, so you've got your year in review post that's done, or it could be your series of reviewing the year posts. Again, this is another subject that could be 2 posts, or it could be 12 posts. Here are the biggest stories of the year in blank law. Calendar's turning over also. Hey, here are what we think are going to be the biggest stories in the year coming forward. What are the biggest privacy stories of 2025? And then also, I mean, heck, keep capitalizing on the work that you've already done. If you wrote a preview post, what's going to happen in construction law in 2024 last year, circle back. How right were you? Were you close? Were you far off? Why did things not turn out the way they did? Or why did they turn out the way that you did? Holidays also make for like really easy fodder, and it can feel a little bit like fodder, but it's like, it resonates with folks. And honestly, it's easier and more enjoyable to write about than, all right, let's work through this ruling and what it has and what means. You still want to write those posts, but here's some easier ones that you can also hit. Hey, Labor Day is coming up. It's on Monday. What's the labor history of your industry? What's the status of the labor movement in your industry now? Are we still seeing the same uptick in unionization? Is that changing? What is going on in the labor, space for this? It's a big holiday. It doesn't just mean the end of summer, although there's another post subject that you could hit. But hey, something to keep an eye out. Halloween's coming up. Are there spooky issues in your area of law right now? Got Thanksgiving after that. What are you thankful for as a blank lawyer, as a financial lawyer, as an employment lawyer, a privacy lawyer? What are you thankful for? These are kind of easy, soft ones. I always think current events are better. I think this is big and more meaningful. But again, remember, the calendar is your friend. You don't have to do, I remember working in social media for the M's, you would have these and it'd be like, oh, keep an eye out for like National Donut Day or National Adopt a Pet Day or National gosh knows what coffee day or what have you. Those probably get a little bit more into the weeds and I wouldn't touch those, but hey, if you're thankful or year in review, those are always great. Remember those. You can also bring what would be considered reactive posts back to your area of law. So say, for example, a state or a municipality, even a different country rolls out a new law. Could that idea spread to your area of law? So say, for example, we're seeing say Arkansas rolls out a shockingly progressive employment law with regards to like parental leave, for example. Okay, could we see this spread to other more conservative states as well, or is it unlikely? If we're seeing this is getting more into the weeds, but if we see the big Loper Supreme Court decision start to impact the world of environmental regulation, for example, is there a way that could impact the world of financial regulation? So keep an eye on the big stories that might be traditional or might be traditionally reactive. Well, hey, this big ruling came down, this, that, or the other. Well, think about how that could apply to your industry or your practice area, even if it doesn't reside in those practice areas. The same can be, said for like general trends and stuff like that. Hey, a certain industry is being hit super hard by blank. So say, for example, the world of coding is being not turned upside down, but there is a lot of discourse in the world of software engineering and the role that humans will play in that going forward. I think a lot of blogs right now have, hey, what does AI mean for blank? And that's helpful. It's good. It's good to have those posts. So they are a form of proactive posts, but the more specifics you can get into, the better. So say, for example, it's like, hey, there's a big debate on will people be coding only in prompts in the future? What is contract writing? Are there parallels between a lawyer creating a contract and using AI and a software engineer, creating software using AI? Are there things that can spread or jump from one industry to the other that you may not see? And similarly, hey, say a regulatory agency comes down hard on a company, what would it look like in your area of law? Uh, for example, I think yesterday, the DOJ, I believe it is going hard after a company called Real Pages, which is a algorithmic real estate company. So basically, landlords would input all types of data with regards to how much rents were in certain areas, the vacancy rates, and all types of stuff like that. A bunch of separate landlords would put that data all into this company called, I believe, Real Pages, and then Real Pages would all algorithmically say, hey, oh, you should charge this much for rent, you should charge that much for rent. Well, in the DOJ's opinion, that's price fixing. Are there other places that could apply to? Are we seeing that in the advertising space? Are we seeing that in the grocery space? There's another one for you. We have the big Kroger DOJ merge, or the big Kroger and I believe Safeway merger. I don't know. I'd say something. Yeah, Kroger Safeway merger. It's impacting all corners of the country. What would another merger that big look like in a different industry? Would the regulation be different? Would the parameters for what constitutes anti-competitive behavior be different based on a different industry? Or just heck, how does the Kroger Safeway potential merger impact real estate or what have you? There's so many different factors at play there. So you can take those reactive posts and bring them in to your practice area from a separate one. This is one we've hit on before, but draw on your day-to-day legal work. Don't hesitate to hit that type of stuff and draw on those things. This kind of bleeds over into the thinking strategically lesson, that core tenet. But hey, are you getting the same question over and over and over again from clients? Something that you have to clarify. Write up a blog post on that. Are you seeing an uptick in a certain type of work? Are you seeing more and more no-fault divorces than you saw 5 years ago? Are you seeing a new approach to non-compete agreements based on what the FTC is doing? Bring that stuff to the blog. Be proactive in bringing more than just, hey, here's this regulation, here's legislation, here's what you have. Tips, obviously, mind confidentiality. Don't say I was working with this company on this, that, or the other. I don't think I have to tell you. Similarly, have a notepad for ideas. It can be, heck, I've talked about, Pocket, Twitter bookmarks, this, that, or the other, blah, 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 blah. Maybe a to-do list that sits on the side of your desk. And when you think of a question, just write it. It sits off to the side. And then, you'll remember it later. You can hit on it. You've got a trove of posts that you can use to write. And you can use these to build and strengthen relationships. And that's a big part of this. So we've talked about those 3 core tenets: write to the medium, be proactive, and then think strategically. This is kind of the bridge between being proactive and thinking strategically, which is, whenever possible, connect to your sources of inspiration. So if you cited a New York Times article about a trend that you relayed to your area of law, follow up with that reporter and say, hey, I just thought your coverage of this was really interesting. I applied it to this other industry and I wanted to let you know that it was helpful. And if you have any questions, need background or what have you, don't hesitate to reach out. You can even also, if you decide, for example, I want to write about this trend in my industry. I'm seeing it. I know it's there, but you're thinking, hey, I can write this all on my own, but I would really love to connect with a reporter at this specific trade publication. Well, you can kind of reverse engineer it where, okay, I knew I was going to write about this, but now I want to find a media entity that also wrote about this because it's a good excuse to make a connection. You find that, you link to them, and you follow the same process of following up with them, let them know you enjoyed their coverage, and you look to build upon it. Same goes for, if you're inspired by a law or lawyer in another practice or geographic area, reach out and connect. Hey, I saw you wrote about what's going on with the Kroger Albertson or the Kroger Safeway merger in this space. Here's how it's impacting us out here. and follow up with people and connect. The reason that law blogging works to bring in work is that you're networking through the internet. So remember that that's kind of the undercurrent for all of this type of stuff is networking. It's not just putting content out there and hoping for the best. It's doing it in a very strategic and a thoughtful way. So I want to take a look at a couple of examples just so you can see these from a couple of law bloggers, a couple recent, and then one super old is the one that I always think of, but I'll relay that to you here. Tom Crane, he's a labor side San Antonio employment lawyer, writes the San Antonio Employment Law blog. He never hesitates to hit on big national subjects. It always stands out to me. I think it stands out to his readers as well. But he wrote this post, Project 2025 and Workers. Project 2025, huge, hot button subject that's going to catch people's attention immediately. It's obviously timely with the elections ramping up and coming to a head. And then also it's a practical post with very specific and real details. So as I pull that open over here, you'll see hey, here's, this particular form. Here's how it may impact PTO, independent contractor classification. This is stuff that is not like readily out there. Or let me make sure we're sharing here. No, we're on desktop one. Yeah. Yeah, we are. All right. So yeah, this is a great example of one of those posts about being proactive. So you can also take a look. Honestly, some people are going to be varying levels of cautious with regards to not seeming too political, but this is a post that could run on almost every law blog. What does Project 2025 mean for this area of law, that area of law, this area of law, that area of law? You can find that type of stuff. So let's go back here, make sure we're still screen sharing. Yeah. Next up we have navigate. Again, this is a lot of the stuff that's current right now is going to be about politics because it's the topic of the day, week, month, year. Navigating politics in the workplace. It's obviously timely. This one's from Squire Patton Boggs. It's a group blog. But it also, again, offers real world practical advice. This is something a lot of employers are dealing with right now. I think hopefully, your workplace is relatively calm. And I know I don't know, people always say, I don't want to get into politics. I don't like doing this. Everything is politics. If you're ever in a conversation with somebody who has the opposite politics of you, you instantly start to notice like where that shows up. It's like, oh, it looks, what are we doing for a tip on this? How much are you putting for a tip? It's like, oh God, now we're getting into this whole big thing. But hey, it's good to talk about it, to be proactive. You don't have to wait for like a ruling to come down on political speech or what have you. You can just talk about it and offer advice. And also you can utilize this over time. It may change from 2023 to 2024 to 2025. And again, it's the type of post that anyone can do. Laws can be different in different localities. You may have, a law wherever you are that says, hey, if they talk about this, that, or the other, it's fine. If they talk about this, then it's not fine. And also, it's not just legal, but you can get into work culture questions as well, which shows as a lawyer that you care. You're taking a look, again, at not just the reactive stuff. You're acting as a lawyer in a proactive fashion, saying, hey, beware of this, beware of that, and cover these types of things. But yeah, you can see the post. It gets into the regulation of it, individual laws. What does the National Labor Relations Act say about this? And yeah, it's really, I think, a great example of a proactive blog post. So bouncing back, this one post I'm about to hit is like admittedly super old, but I love this anecdote. This is 11 years old. I remember when it was written. I remember stuff about it. It's nothing like earth-shattering, but I just loved how proactive it was and also the impact of it. This was a post by a lawyer at Gray Reed who had previously moved on. It was called, Could Johnny Football Go to Jail? I don't know if people are going to remember this, but Johnny Manziel, when he was in college, he was signing a slew of autographs and getting paid a bunch of money. This is before name, image, likeness. So he wasn't supposed to be doing that. It was trouble. And you had this tax lawyer, I believe he was in Texas. He wrote up, hey, okay, well, this is all going on. And obviously he could get in trouble with the NCAA. But similarly, if he wasn't putting this on his taxes and he was making tens of thousands of dollars, this could cause some problems. It's super old. This is again the example that I always think of because it's so perfect. You have this story completely obviously unrelated to tax law, nothing to do with tax law whatsoever. But he takes it and he ties it to this. It was interesting enough to get the media's attention as well. So I want to make sure this is sharing the right space. Screens. Yeah, and you can see, I mean, this post, excuse me, by a lawyer, David Garrett, and you can see this was on like the front page of NFL.com. He got cited here. The publication was previously Texas Tax Talk. But it's crazy. I mean, he was getting major exposure and reaching media he would have never reached if he was just like, hey, here's an update to the Texas tax code. No, and then also, honestly, if you are a white collar lawyer in Texas and you are working with business execs in the world of in Texas, I can tell you everybody knew who Johnny Manziel was. Everybody was aware of what he was doing. He was one of the most popular subjects in honestly everything at the time. It was huge. There's probably no bigger figure in Texas at the time than Johnny Manziel. So it's like, hey, I can bet when this hits the inbox of a bunch of execs in Texas, that's it's going to be relevant to them. It's going to catch their attention. And again, if you're going to forge a relationship with folks, if you're going to connect over a long period of time, well, you do have to get their connection first, or you have to get their attention first, excuse me. So they seem weird, but it fulfills so many different purposes. It seems so much different than what we see in most law blogging, but it gets the attention of media, it gets the attention of your readers, and also it just hits something different than if you were just, hey, here's changes to the Texas tax code. You will not find he's not blogging quite as much as in recent years, but you will not find anybody better or more like literal with the idea of proactive blogging than Steve Baird on Duet's blog. He's moved on to Greenberg Trorg now. I think he's at, forgive me if not, but he is a Hall of Famer proactive blogger. So when I say you're out in the world, bring stuff back to the blog, this is like the most jump the shark literal example of that, which Steve will be out in the world walking along and he'll see a billboard, and as an advertising lawyer takes a picture of it, brings it back to the blog and comments on what that made him think. It could be in the grocery store, it could be on the side of the road, it could be something you saw on TV. And this particular post he's taken, I saw this. Let's go back here. Well, we're just gonna go fly manual here. Make sure we're linked right. Yep. I love Duet's blog. Duet's blog is, if you're like, hey, we're in the intellectual property space, we're in the communication space, boy, does he do a good job. But you can see it's, hey, trademark verbing pandemonium. How do you panda? And he's taking a look at times that other brands have used verbs and stuff like this. And so much of his archive is this type of thing, is stuff that I saw elsewhere. A Prince's Purple Rain lives on. He's taking a look at how that's used so other people might adapt it and use it in different places. No blogger I've seen, apologies, no disrespect to other people who have done this very well as well, but Steve Baird's archive, you dive into the archive of Duet's blog to see what it looks like to be proactive. This is how to do it. This is the master at work of proactive blogging. So with that, that's proactive blogging in a nutshell. If you have questions, fire away. If you're like, hey, honestly, you can throw an industry out there and we can try to hit it with some post ideas. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. But remember those 3 keys when blogging. If you haven't seen the other webinars, dive into our archive. You'll see how to network using your blog, which is thinking strategically. You'll see how to write for online readers, which is writing to the medium. But also remember to be proactive. So write to the medium, be proactive, and think strategically. If you want a law blog post or if you want a written form of that encapsulates everything, just Google Colin O'Keefe, 3 things I tell every law blogger, and it'll show up there. This is going to be a key point from every single webinar I do, but you have to write interesting stuff if you want people to read it. It seems so obvious, but a lot of people overlook it. Draw on your existing habits and practices for ideas. This effort and what I'm describing is not intended to be some secret black magic fix or what have you. It's more so making blogging a part of an extension of what you're already doing. So if you're identifying trends, you're seeing things and you're relaying them to your clients, draw on those. Also, current events are your friend. Work blogging into your everyday consumption habits. If you're taking a look at the newspaper or MSNBC or just LinkedIn on a regular basis, make note when something gives you pause and makes you think of your day job. And then also do the legwork to network. When you do these things, when you are proactive, follow up with the people that you're drawing inspiration from. Everybody loves to be told that they're smart. Everybody loves to be told that they're doing a good job. So if you reach out and say, hey, I really enjoyed this, you did a great job covering this, people love to hear it. And a lot of times they'll go back, they might share their story into a broader audience. It can be great. And yeah, LexBlog is always here to help. We offer strategic consulting, design, a great publishing platform, your domain name, personal coaching, email notifications, SEO optimization, all the works. What we always say is, hey, if you're looking to blog and you know all you want to do is write and not have to worry about anything else, that's what we're here for, and we're happy to help with. And yeah, without further ado, I guess if we don't have any questions, I'm not seeing anything here unless my screen sharing is just absolutely killing me. No, we're good. All right. Well, it was great. Thank you to everybody who was able to join us today. If you didn't catch the full thing, recording will be online shortly. It's actually probably right online at our social networks. But yeah, thanks everybody for taking the time, and we will talk again soon. Take care.